So in this video, I want to talk about women pigeonholing ourselves into harmful stereotypes and or extremes and how we can avoid doing that. And this video was inspired by quite a few trending topics that happened over the last few weeks. Most recently, Sexy Red's new hypersexualized makeup line, where she named her lip glosses after body parts and STDs. Also, Lizzo's weight loss and what appears to be the beginning of her gradual departure from the body positivity movement. Also, Brittany Renner, who has converted to Islam after being overtly promiscuous. And I don't know, Brittany may be trolling, I'm not sure, but either way, it does seem like she's trying to tone it down a little bit. Also, Amber Rose and her switch to conservatism after being a heavy advocate for sex positivity. And lastly, the Ballerina Farm trad wife controversy, where the feminist girlies were outraged about her basically quitting her dreams of being a professional dancer to becoming a stay-at-home mom of 8, living out her wealthy husband's dream of owning a farm and having a bunch of children. All of the women I just mentioned have been typecast or limited to a specific persona or archetype, and a few of them are currently trying to disassociate themselves from certain stigmas that come with the archetype they're associated with. And they're attempting to do that by leaving one extreme and going to the opposite extreme. And or they're trying to rebrand or diversify their image. And if they're not doing it now, I predict that they will be in the future. And I think it's important to learn from these women and have these discussions because these women are very influential and they have a lot of young women following them and they are influencing their behavior. And most women, they're not going to be 100% honest about the negatives of whatever lifestyle they're living when they're actually in it. It won't be until they're finished with the lifestyle and they've learned the lessons. Like Amber Rose, she didn't fully admit to the sacrifices and downsides of sex work and the downsides of being hypersexualized and pigeonholed into that archetype until after she decided she was done with the lifestyle. Lizzo, she probably always wanted to be smaller, but she couldn't fully admit that because she made being fat a part of her brand. Sexy Red, she probably prefers to be less raunchy and less nasty, but she feels like she has to be that way to get attention. And the same thing applies to Brittany Renner. And if Ballerina Farm or any of these other women who are performing trad wife content are suffering, we probably won't hear about it until years from now after they've influenced thousands of women. And just to be clear, I don't think anything is wrong with women identifying with a specific aesthetic or archetype if it's true to who they are, and we're allowed to change and evolve over time. And as women, we're gonna potentially be categorized and stigmatized to some extent no matter what we do. So I'm not trying to strip women of our individuality. The point of this video is to help women be mindful about their decisions and reputation, and also avoid putting themselves too tightly in one box, and specifically in one negative stereotype. So they'll be able to flow from one archetype to another more easily, or when they decide to switch up and they decide they want to do something different. And so they don't get stuck in the performance of being someone they're not anymore because people are used to them being one way. And also that they don't waste too much time representing themselves in a way that isn't going to benefit them in the long run. I think that's the most important because you can't get that time back. And wasting a lot of time making the wrong decisions is how a lot of people end up with regrets and shoulda, woulda, couldas, which regrets are a part of life. But I do believe in moving strategically so you can have as few regrets as possible. And part of moving strategically is diversifying your personal brand and what you show to the world. And we all have a thing that we're known for, and that's normal and it's perfectly fine. But when it comes to your personal brand and what you present to the world, you don't want to make it so strict that you limit your potential to yourself and also your potential in the minds of other people. Unless you're 100% sure that you want to be known for one specific thing for the rest of your life, I don't recommend leaning heavily into one single archetype or stereotype or the extreme of a stereotype, whether that be a hypersexualized Jezebel or an SJW, a sex activist, a fat person activist. Ask yourself what you want to be known for and what you want your legacy to be. Do you want to be known for hypersexuality or twerking or mammying and muling and fighting on the front lines for a particular group of people? Do you want to be seen as or remembered as a sacrificial mother or wife? Or do you prefer to be known for something more individual to you, like a talent or a specific career? You need to think about what your purpose is and what you want to be at the center of your personal brand. And maybe you don't mind being primarily seen as a sex object or an activist or an extremist of some kind. But if you know you don't want to be associated with a certain thing forever, you need to be intentional about diversifying your brand and your representation. And this is very important in the age of social media, because once you put something out there, it's out there forever. And what you put out the most of is what you're going to be associated with and what you're going to be known for. And it's very easy to fall into extremes when it comes to social media. One, because humans are attracted to the display of lifestyle extremism online. That's something I've noticed over the years. We find extreme lifestyles or an extreme way of living interesting because it's rare. That's why a lot of people flock to luxury content, trad wife content, the organizational content. And I did a video on this, so definitely check it out. But many people find the extreme content absurd, but they also find it aspirational. We as humans are fascinated by extremes, even as we complain about them. And look, extremes aren't all bad. They can serve as a catalyst for social, cultural, or political change. They can be a survival and protective mechanism. And I also think it's important for women, especially, to be extreme in dating, at least in certain aspects of dating, to protect ourselves. I am what most people would consider to be extreme with my dating standards. And what I do and don't tolerate from men probably reads as extreme to some people. But being extreme in that area has protected me from a lot of horrible dating experiences. My platform being a space primarily for dark-skinned women is what many consider to be extreme. But it also gave thousands of dark-skinned women and girls more confidence and higher self-esteem. And it gave them the language they needed to combat colorism. And I've gotten thousands of testimonials over the years to prove it. So I definitely think it's necessary to be extreme sometimes and use extremism strategically as long as we know when to stop. All of these convos, whether it be hypergamy, femininity, colorism, soft life, etc., they're not meant to be super strict dogmas or religions. They are flexible, they're changeable, and they're meant to be used as tools. So that means you pick them up when you need them or when the situation calls for them, and then you put them back in the toolbox when they're no longer necessary. Not everything I say about hypergamy, colorism, or femininity, or anything else I talk about should be applied to every single scenario. And I notice that women in these conversations tend to think in absolutes about whatever it is that we're discussing. For example, Black women will often say that having the soft life all the time is unrealistic because most of us have to work and do domestic labor or some other form of work. And it's like, yeah, okay, I work too. I don't think most of the soft life girlies are saying living the soft life is possible 24/7 and you never have to work and you can always rest. Like, is that not common sense? Or Black women will say, oh, well, Black women can't be feminine and soft all the time because people will devour us. And what about the women in the hood? And it's like, yeah, okay, no shit. Nobody is telling Black women to be feminine and sweet in the middle of the ghetto around dangerous criminals. It's common sense. It's also obvious that having a conversation about colorism or hypergamy and all of the other controversial things we talk about on this channel is not appropriate in every setting. I mean, is that something most of us really need to be told? It's obvious that money isn't all that matters when it comes to vetting men. We know that other qualities matter. We know that non-Black men can be dusty like Black men. We know that rich men can be abusive like broke men. That's obvious information to most women. But I noticed that a lot of the women and the people who listen to these discussions, they think in extremes and absolutes, and they exaggerate and apply every single thing we say to every situation. And that's either because they're not intelligent, nuanced thinkers, or because they're trying to discredit us, so they intentionally misconstrue what we're saying. And I do also blame the women in these spaces giving extreme hypergamy and femininity advice or unrealistic dating and lifestyle advice, because they are the low-hanging fruit that most people grab at to make it seem like most of us with similar talking points think as extreme as they do. But none of this advice is absolute. It can be changed depending on the circumstances. None of the advice is fail-proof. There are upsides and downsides to everything, and there's nuance to everything. And the women who are black and white thinkers tend to be the women who become dogmatic and extreme in these conversations, or they tend to be the ones to glamorize and romanticize the advice and quote unquote drink the Kool-Aid and think that hypergamy or femininity or being a trad wife is going to save them. The women who tend to be the most successful with the advice are the ones who know how to make the distinction between reality and glamour. The ones who know how to use glamour or femininity or whatever other tool to their advantage and put it down when it's not needed. The women who win are the women who use extremism selectively and depending on the situation. So more of us need to practice selective and situational extremism. Like I said, I am what most people would consider to be extreme when it comes to my dating standards. For me, it's hypergamy or nothing. Now, does that mean I think a man of means is going to rescue me and save me from all of my problems and not have any flaws and be the perfect man? Does that mean I think our relationship can't fail? No. So yeah, how I vet men may be considered to be extreme, but my concept of relationships and my idea about men and the nature of men, it's not extreme. I don't romanticize or glamorize men and relationships, even though I'm a little bit quote unquote extreme when it comes to my standards. So that's kind of an example of what I mean by selective and situational extremism. I also think there are things we can learn from extremists and incorporate some of their practices into our daily lives, but just be careful about only identifying and showcasing one extreme. Make sure you offset it with showcasing other parts of your personality, especially if you attach your face and identity to an extreme. Obviously, the rules are a little bit different when you're anonymous and don't show your face, but even then, you still want to be mindful about what you're presenting online. Now, when it comes to choosing a lifestyle or deciding what kind of relationship you want, you also want to avoid trying to mimic some of the extremes that you see online, because you're usually romanticizing what you're looking at and you're not getting the full picture. And that was the whole argument with Ballerina Farm. And even though I like her content, y'all know I like some of the trad wife content, the luxury content, all of the soft life stuff. I like that stuff. But I'm also under no illusions about what I'm looking at. I'm also not romanticizing what I'm looking at. So it's very important to stay rooted in reality when you're looking at this kind of stuff, because it was revealed that Hannah from Ballerina Farm, some days she can't even get out of bed because she's so exhausted raising all of those kids and doing all of that domestic labor around the house and on the farm. Now, personally, I don't look at Ballerina Farm and want her life. That is not my idea of happiness or liberation, but we're two different people. Some women really do feel that their primary purpose in life is to be a wife and a mother, and that is okay. And also, something I want women to understand is that no lifestyle or relationship is fail-proof. No relationship with a man is free of sacrifice. And the sooner women realize that, the better off we'll be. And I kept seeing women say, oh, well, Ballerina Farm, she still has to work. She still has to do domestic labor despite being married to a millionaire. And I'm like, okay, how much work do you think she would have to do if she was with a broke man? You're going to have to do some kind of labor, whether the man is broke or not. And the response a lot of women had to this story, it just makes me wonder if some of us really expect a relationship that's free of labor and sacrifice. A relationship with a man. Like, that's not a thing, ladies. So you need to keep that in mind when choosing a romantic lifestyle. And again, don't believe everything you see on social media. Ballerina Farm, even if she doesn't have any hired help or nannies or whatever, she is the exception. Most women who are millionaires and have 8 kids, they have hired help. But again, the idea is not to take these online lifestyles at face value, and definitely don't try to replicate them, at least not entirely, if at all. And ultimately choose the best choice for you, the choice that has the most benefits for you. And you know, even though I have my gripes with modern feminism, I am thankful that first and second wave feminism especially gave us the choices that we have today as women. But when I observe women and I listen to what they say, it seems like for most of us, the happy place is somewhere in the middle of these extremes that we see online and in the mainstream media. We all want to be a little bit sexy, but not hypersexual. We want to fulfill our dreams and also have a family. But the reality is, you can have it all, but you may not be able to have it all at once. So ladies, you need to think about that and plan as wisely as possible. And notice, I didn't say that you had to be perfect or make all the right decisions. I am just saying be mindful and make it easier for yourself. And that includes making sure that you don't box yourself into stereotypes and extremes, and making sure to diversify your image. And so my other tips on diversifying your personal brand and representation is: one, make sure you're diversifying your actual skills and interests. Whether it's in your career or personal life, engage in activities and projects that differ from what you typically do. You have to get out of your comfort zone. And I've said this on many other videos, but I cannot stress this enough. Every once in a while, do something that makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable. That way you can broaden your horizons, and you can also broaden other people's perception of you. And also, especially as a Black woman, challenge any stereotypes associated with your phenotype or even you as a person. Break the expectations and occasionally step out of the roles that people expect you to play. If you're known for one thing, switch it up, do something different, challenge that perception. And also be vocal and communicate your versatility. Talk about your other capabilities and your interests outside of what people know you for. Don't let people assume that you fit into one category. Y'all know I do other things out of what I talk about on this channel, and a lot of you are very curious about it because I talk about it a lot. And if you're on social media, showcase a variety of content that appeals to different audiences on one or more of your platforms. You also want to cultivate relationships with people from different fields, industries, and backgrounds. I've talked about multiculturalism on this platform several times, and that can help you gain new perspectives and avoid being seen through a narrow lens by other people. And if you want to know how you come across to other people, you can always ask for feedback. Ask your trusted friends or your mentors. Ask them how you come across and make adjustments as necessary. And as I touched on earlier, don't be afraid of doing new things. Keep an open mind and be willing to explore new ideas, new perspectives, new experiences, so you don't get stuck in a single way of thinking or being. Also, go outside and touch grass. Don't just listen to these videos all day long and be cooped up in your room listening to YouTube all day long. Get outside and go mingle with the real world. That's going to keep you grounded in reality. It's going to keep you around different people. Don't let the internet be the only way you socialize. I have had a very social summer, and that's why I've been gone so much, because I've been outside mingling and being around other people, even though when my introverted self doesn't necessarily want to be. And another thing, you definitely need to embrace change and be willing to evolve. When you become stagnant, that can lead to being stereotyped, and constantly growing and adapting can help you be more dynamic and unpredictable. And also, stay true to yourself. Don't change who you are just to avoid being pigeonholed and stereotyped. Embrace your complexity and multifacetedness and let that guide your evolution. And also, don't operate in fear. Don't limit your potential out of fear. Don't be afraid to change course and do something different, even if people don't like it or agree with it. And y'all know I take my own advice when it comes to this. I do and say what I want. I make changes when I want to, no matter who likes it or not. If I change my mind about something or don't want to do something anymore, or if I want to start something new, that's exactly what I'm going to do, whether it's popular, whether it's accepted by other people or not. I do factor in what my audience wants too, but my decisions are primarily based on what I want to do. And for the most part, it's worked in my favor. So ladies, down in the comments, please share any advice that you have for young women on how to avoid getting trapped in extremes or how to avoid falling into negative stereotypes. Also, let me know what you think about this video. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch up with you in the next one.